Good morning, everyone. It is August 8th, August 9th, midway through this week of C2-A-Days. We are going to be diving into, of course, some injury news, some depth chart notes from a wide range of sources today, trying to keep an eye on how teams are practicing so far as we prepare for the 2023 college football season. The first note that I wanted to mention comes from Seth Emerson of The Athletic, who, of course, covers the two-time defending national champion Georgia Bulldogs. The injury situation has been a little bit of a concern so far in fall camp. Early when we started this series, we mentioned a couple of defensive players that were limited early in drills. It sounds like perhaps Michael Williams, the highly talented defensive lineman, might be limited into the season potentially. Haven't seen a firm update on that. But Smeal Munden, the inside linebacker, continues to miss time in practice, as well as most recently, according to Emerson, cornerback Kamari Lassiter, a starter on that unit, is dealing with an injury and missed time on Tuesday. But for fantasy purposes, which we do, of course, keep an eye on here, Kendall Milton, unfortunately, again, is dealing with a hamstring injury, according to Emerson. Mentioned that it doesn't necessarily look like it's a serious issue, but because it is something that he has dealt with off and on all too often to this point in his career, the coaching staff is going to be cautious with Milton. On a positive note, a player that we mentioned who was missing time early in fall camp with an injury, running back Branson Robinson, who missed some time with a foot issue earlier in camp, was back for the media viewing portion of Tuesday's practice. So there was another note at wide receiver. Apparently, Ra Thomas, the transfer from Mississippi State, did not practice on Tuesday as well. So in this series, we certainly point out when some key players are missing time. It isn't always the best use of our time and energy to just report on every single player who's in, who's out in a particular practice. But did want to mention that at Georgia specifically, who of course is pretty much everyone's preseason number one team in every poll you're going to see in our CFB Winning Edge team strength power rankings, Georgia is kind of a number one, but they're technically number two behind Ohio State. We just have a particular way of calculating things, and Georgia comes up just a tiny bit short of Ohio State in that initial run through. But this is a team that, of course, is a heavy favorite in every game. Our individual game projections have Georgia favored by at least a touchdown in every regular season game and by double digits in all but one. So it's not that missing Kendall Milton for a few practices in August is going to make a huge difference. I mean, Dejon Edwards, Robinson being back and healthy, of course, the talented true freshman Roderick Robinson, another guy who I'm excited to see at the college level after missing last year with an injury, Andrew Paul, Cash Jones, it sounds like, is getting some buzz in fall camp. So, Georgia's going to be just fine at the running back position. They're probably going to be just fine on defense, even though the players that we've mentioned, three in particular, are projected as starters, returning starters in two of those cases. It just is something to monitor for a team that, of course, has had not the best off-season, off the field, as far as some of the headlines, and certainly in one case in particular, a very tragic situation. But we're keeping an eye out for every team, even those teams that looks like can weather a starter or a key player missing a little bit of time in fall camp. At LSU, Glenn West of Go 247 noted that there's a running back injury situation to monitor there as well. Josh Williams, according to West, has not been available the last couple of days at LSU's fall camp. As a result, Logan Diggs, who's consistently been mentioned as the top running back in drills, gets more reps along with a long list of players at that position for LSU. Noah Cain, John Emery, Amani Goodwin, a couple of true freshmen mixing in as well. And after practice, West quoted head coach Kelly as saying that a collection of experienced backs that have a different style. Each one of them has a little bit different style that they can offer. We've got one football. We'll try to figure it out as it goes. But my guess is it always ends up coming back to the guys with the most experience rise to the top and end up taking over. So though there have been, some good notes on Caleb Jackson specifically early in camp as a true freshman mixing in, sounds to me that Brian Kelly is likely going to lean on Logan Diggs, Noah Cain, and that, top of the projected depth chart right now as far as getting the heavier workload as the season progresses, certainly. And, wanted to point out our Chris Moxley at Campus to Canton tweeted yesterday something that may sound fairly obvious, but it is definitely a great point. Logan Diggs, probably a bit underrated right now in CFF drafts, given the consistency that he has shown, being the top guy in early practices. Wilson Alexander of The Advocate, who also, of course, reports on LSU, mentioned that it's not just, the running backs worth watching with injury concerns. Wide receiver Brian Thomas has missed some time recently. Senior safety Greg Brooks, who we discussed earlier in the week, apparently left practice with an injury. Williams, of course, and then safety Matthew Langlois were at practice on Tuesday, but not available. He did mention, Alexander gave a little more detail, said Williams did not have pads or a helmet. And a couple of others were not, seen on the sidelines or on the field. Freshman defender Jackson Howard, corner J.K. Johnson, who we expect could have, maybe would have projected as a starter in the secondary, who we mentioned had a lower left leg issue. He was apparently not spotted at practice. And then another freshman safety, Kylan Jackson. So somewhat similar to Georgia. LSU is a team, not a lot of folks have them ranked, whether you're talking analytical power ranking or polls, things like that, as one of the top challengers for a playoff spot or national championship. But LSU is definitely considered a top 10 team, and by some folks maybe inching into that top 5 discussion. So the fact that just as most teams do early in fall camp, dealing with some injuries of varying degrees, it's just worth monitoring to see how that can impact the roster as a whole, the depth of the roster as a whole, and then, of course, what players are potentially taking the opportunity and proving themselves as capable of taking on a bigger role. This note from Alexander mentioned that with Thomas out, Chris Hilton has been taking the first team reps. But as many teams do, again, Alexander mentions that the Tigers had heavily rotated their skill positions, especially running back, mentions Goodwin and Cain as well. So, more of what we're hearing, like a lot of teams across the country, lots of guys getting first team reps, but just something to keep an eye on, perhaps at LSU. Right when we were getting ready to record yesterday, happened to see a piece in the Clarion Ledger. Ole Miss reporter David Eckert wrote an in-depth piece that had a lot of great notes. Didn't get a chance to mention it on an episode of C2-A-Days yet, but the big bold headline, first thing that Eckert mentioned quoting him here, says, "Good luck keeping freshman wideout Aiden Williams off the field." From a C2C standpoint, CFF Dynasty standpoint, everyone is interested in what the freshman newcomers, how they're performing, what role might they be able to carve out in their first season. And at least according to Eckert, Williams looks like he's going to have a role. And we don't necessarily know what the Ole Miss wide receiver group is going to look like. Zachary Franklin, who's been an incredibly productive receiver at UTSA, transferred in, still dealing with a little bit of an injury, it sounds like. So I know that Jordan Watkins, the only returning starter, quote unquote, for the Rebels from last year's squad, is back. Trey Harris, a transfer from Louisiana Tech, is apparently getting reps with the ones as well. Dayton Wade is someone that Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin has wanted to get opportunities and find a role for. So it'll be interesting to see if Williams truly, will emerge as a potential rotation player. Who knows? Maybe even a starter. He is, from a raw talent standpoint, if you're looking at things like 247 rating or On3 industry rating coming out of high school, is the highest rated player in that unit. So certainly you would expect, if he's able to get up to speed with playbook and knowing his roles and responsibilities, has the talent to come in and potentially make an impact, certainly play a fair amount. According to Eckert, again, just a little bit of detail on Williams, says one, should have a significant role this fall. He's already tormenting the defensive backs at practice with regularity, has come down with a handful of highlight reel catches too, and his physical gifts are clearly a cut above. He's listed at 6'3". That is the tallest receiver according to the numbers I've got in our team profiles, which we do take from the official online roster. So big target as well, as far as they go, in addition to just that raw talent. So a name to note, if you haven't already, Aiden Williams could be in line for significant snaps as a true freshman. There were more notes from Eckert. We've I think discussed, I've seen it certainly in the Campus to Canton Discord and a variety of other places as well. But Eckert mentions it as well, that Jackson Dart has been taking the majority of the first team snaps. There was some thought early in the offseason, especially with Spencer Sanders transferring in after his long career at Oklahoma State, that he may challenge for that spot. Walker Howard is, well thought of, also transferred in from LSU, and then a true freshman, Austin Simmons, made sort of a surprise decision to join Ole Miss as well. But so far, at least, Dart seems to be holding everyone off in that competition. Seems to be his job to lose. But thought there was sort of an interesting note from Jalen Knox, a quote, I should say, said, "Spencer's really coming along, and Dart looks like a whole new quarterback this year." So it's not the first time I've seen that, but there have been multiple mentions in the past, other reports in the spring and summer, but that apparently Jackson Dart is just seemingly, according to teammates, taking his level of play to a higher level. So that's exciting if you're an Ole Miss fan. There was a note at the tight end position. Apparently, Memphis transfer Caden Prescorn has already edged Michael Trigg, back-to-back spring all-star Michael Trigg, who, in my opinion, still very, very talented and hopefully will have a role in this offense. I believe in him as a pass catcher. But Prescorn sounds like is establishing himself as the top tight end. Lane Kiffin was quoted in the piece, said Prescorn has fit in really well. The players put him on the leadership committee already after not being here very long. It says a lot. So he's extremely mature. We're excited about him. Trigg has done some good things. We're still pushing him forward. It's still early in camp. But Prescorn's already seen as a leader within the program. That's certainly, I think, a good sign for him. But don't be surprised if we see quite a bit of two tight end packages at Ole Miss, especially with a little bit of uncertainty at the wide receiver position, or just maybe a lack of fully established options on the whole. So just my speculation there. But there was one final note from, again, this just packed piece by David Eckert of the Clarion Ledger. New incoming transfer Jam Griffin, who played quite a bit, was in the rotation at Oregon State. Expect that he's going to have an opportunity to challenge for maybe the number 2 role behind Quinshon Judkins at running back. Eckert mentioned that Ulysses Bentley IV, Kedrick Riscano, the true freshman, and then Matt Jones, a walk-on, have all seen second team reps. Griffin's addition will only complicate matters, but as he says here, that's a good problem for the Rebels. At Notre Dame, do want to give a positive mention. The blueandgold.com group at On3 has really been on top of things. Tyler Hork has tweeted out several very useful nuggets, and then had a really interesting and informative piece on Sam Hartman's performance during a recent practice for Blue Gold, where he ran down multiple practice periods, gave the number of completions, which receivers were involved, which incomplete passes were Hartman's fault, which ones could be blamed on his target, some drops, wrong routes being run, things like that. And as I was reading through it, because I love that sort of thing, love that level of detail. It's not always sometimes it can be a little too much, if that makes sense. Sometimes when we're looking for pieces of information, if you're a Notre Dame fan, you want that level of detail. Absolutely. We're taking, or trying to, a little bit more of a bird's eye view on 133 programs, or as many as we can. And sometimes that level of detail, or if you happen to see one piece that has such a level of detail and you pull out one useful piece of information, like last night I mentioned another Notre Dame source where Tobias Merriweather struggled in one rep blocking against a corner. Sometimes you can take one piece of information and try to apply it too broadly. And sometimes you can get caught up in the minutia of a particular 11-on-11 drill where a quarterback goes 7 for 14 or whatever it was. But still, just really do appreciate the work that folks are out there doing, especially when you get the level of access that the Notre Dame beat was able to get at a recent practice, and taking full advantage of it, giving fans and readers as much information as possible. I do very much appreciate it, even if I personally have to guard myself a little bit to try not to get sucked into too much detail that could get me off the path of what we're trying to accomplish here. Quick notes on what Horka tweeted out as well. In addition to that piece, he also wrote a piece about Steve Angeli's impressive performance at quarterback in that practice. But mentioned running back Skip Vallata. Audric Estime took the night off from team periods. According to Horka, said he looked fine, chipper, and walking around talking to guys, but he didn't get in the action. So apparently Valletta was able to get some reps as a result of the top running back there being unavailable for the evening. Doesn't sound like it's a injury or anything of major issue, just sort of a veteran day off, perhaps, as we get into the grind of camp. But just sort of a nice note there as well. But some of the things that we do try to focus on, and I thought that the Tailgate Tent tweeted out just a really simple mention of perhaps, and they were mentioning it from a betting perspective, but maybe some of the things that are most notable in a fall camp report. Says things I look for in fall camp reports: pace comments, injuries, schematics, trusting the beats on a particular player having a huge year or players grasping a new scheme or not. So we try to cover, injuries, of course, try not to get bogged down too much in some of the minutia on the depth chart, because it can be difficult to see who's, fully in charge of a job and who's just getting extra reps. But that pace note is one that I do want to make sure to mention as much as possible when we get a piece of information. And moving on to Clemson, Anna Adams of Clemson 247 posted an interview earlier with offensive lineman Marcus Tate, who mentioned that tempo is among the biggest differences under new offensive coordinator Garrett Riley for the Tigers. Here's a quote: "Biggest difference is the tempo. It's more creative. We're getting our playmakers the ball out in space more often. It really takes pressure off the offensive line because we have a lot of lighter boxes. I'm not going to lie. We're able to play faster, more aggressive, and free." Also mentioned some things about that the offensive line has a little more say in pass protection, which is just kind of a thing to note there. But I went and looked through, because I'm working on our stat projections for the C2C Winning Edge members. And Clemson averaged nearly 26 seconds per offensive snap in 2023, which is according to our numbers. We look at games against FBS opponents only in the regular season or conference playoff games only. Didn't include bowl games that can mess with the numbers a little bit. Didn't include games against FCS opponents because a little more garbage time on average. And so, that was not the fastest, obviously, but it was interesting to note. By the way, that nearly 26 seconds ranked 54th nationally. At TCU, Riley's unit last year in that same period of games averaged 27-19 in snaps, which ranked 89th nationally. So TCU actually last year operated at a good bit slower pace comparatively than Clemson did. However, because we do look at a 3-year window for play callers, it's perhaps worth mentioning that when Riley was at SMU, the previous 2 years, both teams in 2021 and 2020 averaged about 23 and a half seconds per offensive snap. That would have ranked in the top 20 or right around the edge of the top 20. So though last year, TCU didn't really operate at this, go fast all the time, and it sounds like Clemson's probably not either. But if we're looking at, which direction can we expect? Can we expect more snaps per game from Clemson, or a quicker period between snaps? At least, and we try not to read too much into just one quote, but sounds like at least the way that they're practicing, there's a chance that we get a number a little closer to what Garrett Riley's offenses at SMU did compared to, or instead of, the little bit slower pace that we saw at TCU last season. At Texas, Joe Cook of Inside Texas gave a good write-up that I found interesting on 5-star linebacker Anthony Hill. Very talented player, sounds like had a huge spring, and kind of interesting to think about where he's going to have a role in that Texas defense. It's similar to some of the things that we were saying about Ole Miss and LSU and some of the freshmen who are getting looks at running back, receiver, or what have you. It sounds like Anthony Hill is going to have a role as a situational pass rusher, perhaps. There were quotes in the piece from Pete Kwiatkowski, the defensive coordinator, says that Hill, he's going to be able to learn piecemeal. For us as coaches, it's finding that role for him. Like I mentioned earlier, maybe it's a third down passing situation, or maybe it's on third down passing situations where we can get him involved, coming off the edge or blitzing, playing to his skill set. We don't want to throw everything at him. I think he's in a good position. So, there was some mention that Hill's probably going to be more of an off-ball linebacker in the future, much like he played in high school. Nevertheless, the promise that he's shown as a pass rusher so far in spring and fall camp, maybe a little quicker path to getting on the field in some situations. At Oregon State, Brendan Slaughter and TJ Mathewson of Beaver's Edge, the Rivals site, made note, depth chart notes here. Didn't see a whole lot of action from Damian Martinez in the most recent practice. Maybe a little more of Deshaun Fenwick, who looks like the number 2. However, this is quoting from the piece, the guy who really continues to pop is Isaiah Newell. Newell looks to have a huge role with the Jam Griffin transfer. He looks bigger and faster and gets around the edge with pretty good ease. So even without Griffin, a little bit of depth at that running back position, at least as far as the top 3 goes. I saw a note earlier in the week, and I forget from who specifically, but that Oregon State has moved over Cord Shaw, who was a linebacker, to running back. In our team profiles, those are the 4 looks like scholarship running backs in the mix. So the group as a whole is not, super deep, and losing Jam Griffin hurts that, 3rd, 4th guy down the line. But it sounds like Newell is certainly ready to step forward and take on a role when called upon. And the 2, Slaughter and Mathewson, mentioned that there was a pretty clear-cut QB rotation. DJ Uiagalelei was with the first team, Ben Gulbranson with the second. So not a major surprise, but most places, we see so-and-so is rotating with the 1s and oh, yeah, there's really a competition going here. Again, it's just one line in a report, but sounds like perhaps DJ Uiagalelei is pretty close to establishing his spot atop the depth chart there. Jackson Moore, now for Bear territory, got to be the hardest working guy, and certainly the 247 Sports side of things mentioned him for their San Jose State site, for the Fresno State site, Stanford as well. Now some notes from a Cal practice where he gave a pretty long list of guys dealing with injuries. Outside linebacker Miles Williams, wide receiver Marcus Dortch were both out with injuries, minor injuries, according to Moore. Garrett Daly, wide receiver, was in a walking boot, so perhaps a little more significant. A couple of defensive backs dealing with injuries as well. DeJuan Butler, Patrick McMorris, who it says was cleared for drills, but not for team periods. McMorris, highly productive transfer from San Diego State. Some maybe interesting depth chart notes, again, at the quarterback position where some rotating is going on. We mentioned that there have been some reports, kind of vague mention by me a show or 2 ago, that Sam Jackson's not getting all the first team reps. Personally, and of course I'm far away from it, but it still seems like I think the guy to beat in this quarterback situation, but have seen from multiple places, including 247 Sports and the rival site that follows Cal, that Fernando Mendoza was in the mix. Well, now it sounds like Ben Finley is getting some first team reps. So some of the reports, and Moore mentioned, that Jackson shows flashes, obviously very athletic. It says here that apparently he had the best reps of the 3 quarterbacks who all got a series of 7-on-7. Jackson was a perfect 4-for-4, had a 25-yard pass that connected on, also had maybe the best drive of a 11-on-11 period after that, but also mentioned some inconsistencies. And that seems to perhaps be why Jackson hasn't quite nailed this job down just yet, because incredibly athletic, can break through, make a play with his legs. Also, I think has some real promise as a passer. But if he's making mistakes, some bad decisions, interceptions, it sounds like there might have been a dropped interception as well in that 11-on-11 period, that is going to perhaps create an opportunity for a redshirt freshman like Mendoza or another transfer who they went out and got after Jackson in Ben Finley. So Cal still working through some things, perhaps. That one maybe a little more, I don't know if believable is the right word, but seems like maybe Jackson's still the guy to beat in the long run, in my opinion, just for his upside. But if that coaching staff wants someone that they can trust a little more down to down, might open a real opportunity for Mendoza or Finley to take hold of that job, because it sounds like Jackson hasn't nailed it down just yet. At TCU, things are pretty clear. According to Stephen M. Johnson of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, he tweeted in response to a question about Chance Nolan, mentioning that Nolan is no longer with the program. So Sam Jackson's former teammate at TCU is, seemingly Chandler Morris got that job close to 100% locked down. Josh Hoover moves into really the only, I believe, the only scholarship backup quarterback there. A couple of other walk-ons as well. And unless I missed an athlete who is working at quarterback, at least as far as our team profiles go, it's Chandler Morris and Josh Hoover, and not much as far as rated or scholarship depth left at that position if Chance Nolan is no longer there. A few quick notes elsewhere at Syracuse. Emily Liker of Syracuse.com noted that a backup tight end is going to be out for the season due to injury. That's Stephen Mahar Jr. At East Carolina, there was a quote from Mike Houston, as reported by Hoist the Colors, the 247 site there. Stephen Igo says, quote, "I'll be honest." Oh, this is in response to Josiah Hatfield, whether or not he separated himself in the wide receiver room. It says, quote, "I'll be honest. Usually I'll brag about a kid and they'll go out and crap the bed sometimes the next day, but he has not had a bad day. He has looked like a veteran, experienced receiver. He is making plays every single day." So again, the CFB winning edge projections pretty low on East Carolina with the amount of turnover that they have had. However, it sounds like some players are emerging as at least go-to players, separating themselves and solidifying their roles in that first-team offense. And Hatfield seems like is at the very top of that list. I wanted to follow up a note on North Texas. Mentioned a real positive report from Reed Smith of Mean Green 247 over the weekend that said Chandler Rogers was the best quarterback. And I took that to mean that maybe he had locked down that position, but in a Monday or Tuesday report from Smith, he noted that taking perceived first-team reps at quarterback were junior quarterbacks Chandler Rogers and Stone Earl, along with senior Jace Reuter. So that quarterback battle is apparently still ongoing, though I think most would expect that Rogers is, again, the player to beat there. However this shakes out, I'm going to try to continue to mention how this impacts our power rankings and things like that. The way we calculate things, there's not a huge difference in the individual player rating, how it would impact the quarterback position and the team as a whole, from Chandler Rogers to Jace Reuter or to Stone Earl. Earl is a little lower rated than the other two, but I think Rogers' skill set is exciting. But from just a value standpoint, what he's put together from a talent profile coming out of high school to experience and production on the field, not necessarily a huge improvement or drop off if you're moving between he and Reuter or Earl. UAB had a pretty interesting note on the team site, I thought, that Jermaine Brown Jr. has been someone kind of strangely stuck out to me a little bit in CFF circles from the early off season one, and this is an observation that not everyone maybe deals with, but in my opinion, should not be eligible at the wide receiver position. A little bit of a thing that just irks me for whatever reason. But if you were counting on, Jermaine Brown Jr. stepping into what's been a really, really productive line of running backs at UAB. Of course, we've got a new coaching staff there. We don't really know what Trent Dilfer and Alex Mortenson's offense is going to look like. But again, from the team site, Jermaine Brown Jr. has received all the preseason accolades, deservedly so. But the running back room is arguably the deepest it has ever been. New addition Isaiah Jacobs, who started his college career at Maryland, has shown a tremendous combination of speed, power, and agility, while redshirt junior Will Witherspoon continues to provide valuable snaps and reliability. A pair of talented redshirt freshmen in Taven Curry and Lee Beebe continue to develop, and graduate transfer Demetrius Battle, standing at 6 foot, 245 pounds, has proven to be a wrecking ball that is tough to bring down. So, don't right now have a great guess on Brown's workload. I think, as a guy, he's listed at 195 pounds, so it's not like he's tiny and can't, carry the football 20, 25 times in a game, but has mostly been used as kind of a complementary piece, does have a good receiving, has shown good receiving ability coming out of the backfield. Still shouldn't be eligible at wide receiver, but I do think he's in line to be the top back there. But, and you can't always, I guess, trust the team sites, the official team sites, to give you the most insight. Nevertheless, sounds like UAB is pretty excited about the depth that they've got in that position. So I'm haven't been super high on Brown as far as CFF rankings go this year. Not sure I've drafted him a single time. I could obviously be very, very wrong, and he could just go off and have a huge year. But maybe another potential reason to exercise some caution is that could be the deepest position on the roster there at UAB. One final note right before we got ready to record, there was a quick video tweeted by Adam Lichtenstein of the Sun Sentinel on Wednesday morning at Miami. As the Hurricanes opened practice number 7, there was video of lineman Zion Nelson warming up with the team. So we haven't had very many positive notes about the talented tackle Nelson really in the last couple of years, but there has been some concern that his injury issues would linger into the season. They still may. Don't know anything other than just he was suited up and going through some stretches. Perhaps we'll get some more information later today after practice, but at least a step in the right direction that Zion Nelson, who some mocked as a first round pick at times over the last couple of years, Miami certainly could use him this season as they look to bounce back. So that is it for this AM edition. We will be back this evening, try to catch up on notes from practices as they are ongoing throughout the day. Any other notes that we are able to pick up from a wide range of sources and beat reporters who do such a great job covering their individual teams. Really appreciate the work that they put in and the help that they provide for us. And we hope to collect that and help our listeners and viewers with that. So Nicholas Ian Allen, again, for campus2canton.com. Check out our C2C Winning Edge package at Campus to Canton. All those player rankings, player ratings, team rankings, stat projections, all of that is available at the C2C Winning Edge tier. I'm always available to answer questions on those, especially in our Discord, which is also available to our members. So if you have an opportunity, we would certainly love your support and appreciate all of that. So everyone have a wonderful day, and we will see you this evening for the PM edition of August 9th's C2-A-Days.